before we move on, because I want to look at the title race a little bit in a second, but I saw a tweet from Bubbles on Twitter, who has been on this podcast one point a couple of years ago, and I think it was an interesting one because she said, Alisson, one of the best, goalkeepers ever, but he does have a bit of a tendency to make, when he does make errors, they do tend to be in really big games. Thinking back to City earlier this season,
remember.
Real Madrid last season was a game in lockdown when City beat Liverpool 4-1, and Alisson obviously had a nightmare there. And there's probably a few others that I'm kind of forgetting. Is that something that is like the one criticism you could make of Alisson, or is that a bit too harsh? Because, we're not used to, tearing into him or Van Dijk or Salah or, quite a lot of the stalwarts of this team. But it does feel like there's a little bit of a pattern there.
Yeah, quite possibly. And obviously, if the evidence begins to stack up, it's hard to ignore it, essentially, isn't it? The one in lockdown, I think Phil Foden profited from that one in the Man City game. But that's the one that sprung to my mind straight away. And he has had moments like this, but I think he has moments like this sort of dotted in and around the season. And as you touched on before, like sometimes they get punished, sometimes they don't, essentially. I think it's just kind of one of them things, because obviously maybe we highlight it more when it is in the big game, because that obviously hurts you more and the impact is felt a little bit longer potentially. And also, obviously, we play high risk football for the most part at the back, and better teams are more likely to punish you for that because they're obviously more alert to it. The quality is higher, the press is higher, so they're probably more in and around the situation itself. Because if you've got a team standing off you, and Alisson and Van Dijk have a mix-up, or I think Alisson and Gomez had one against Leeds as well. So I think that was more on Gomez, to be honest. But yeah, I guess this kind of happens. So I wouldn't overanalyze it from an Alisson point of view, if I'm being really honest. I mean, as I say, listen, it's not good, and I'd like it if he cut it out, obviously. But it's also just kind of one of them things, as I referenced a moment ago, the better teams are more likely to punish you for it. So I just think it's part and parcel. We kind of have to accept it because that's the way we like to play. It's a risk and reward sort of strategy. And Liverpool, they're not going to change the way we operate. We've got Alisson Becker, because he's the best goalkeeper in terms of saving stuff in the world, in my opinion, but also because he's absolutely exceptional with his feet and his ball playing ability, although yesterday was the exception to that comment. But yeah, I wouldn't sort of be too concerned about it moving forward. It's not a case of like, let's just say we get to Europa League final, or when Man City come to Anfield or whatever, it's like we have to be really cautious of Alisson. I just think, yeah, maybe knowing when and when not to deal with situations might be sort of a bit nicer. I think I'm definitely one who panics dramatically when we are messing around at the back, especially against these high press teams who've got all the quality and all the ability to punish you from these type of moments. But yeah, I don't see us changing. I don't see Alisson Becker changing. And ultimately, it's the way the football club plays now, as I say, because I watched the 18s recently produce one of the greatest goals I've seen a Liverpool side produce for some time. And that started from the back. And that could easily have gone wrong if I think the keeper played a pass basically between the lines, split into on-rushing attackers. And if you lose the ball there, you get punished. So, yeah, one of those things I would say, as opposed to a major problem.
Yeah, and I think the concern here, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, it probably was more on Van Dijk anyway, but there's obviously dual culpability. But the concern here is that kind of mix up between two of the players who, in fairness, have got us to this point in the season. We wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without the two of them. But is that kind of this season's big moment that we look back on? And that is the big worry, because it's one thing if that's someone who isn't one of the team's biggest stars and is maybe liable to make a mistake, but it kind of stings extra when it's two people who are normally completely reliable, because you start to wonder, is that going to be something that defines this season for them? And then what does that define their sort of time at Liverpool in your mind? Kind of spirals out of control a little bit. Hopefully they can make sure that it's not going to be a key moment in the season. It's something that is ultimately forgotten about, but kind of in the immediate aftermath of the game. This is why I said it was a haunting moment. You want to be playing another game really quickly after this one. It's Liverpool having to wait till next weekend when they play Burnley is a bit frustrating.